Y'all, it's your boy Easy, and on today's episode of Easy Opens, we're going to be taking a look at McFarlane's DC Multiverse Clock King. Clock King first appeared in World's Finest Comics, issue number 111 from 1960. He was created by France Heron and Lee Elias. The real name of this version of the Clock King is William Tachman. He was originally a Green Arrow villain, although he's also shown up in Batman the Animated Series, looking very different. And he has no superpowers, just a master planner who dabbles in clock-themed gadgetry. Alright, so let's get this figure free from its plastic prison and see what we think about Clock King. Fresh out the box, y'all, I am so taken with this figure. I absolutely love this look and pretty much everything about this figure. Mostly just based on looks is the real reason I wanted him, because he just looks so outrageous and I absolutely love it. All the clocks everywhere, and then the accessories that we'll talk about in a second, like for weapons. Oh, it's just so cool. And the clock face and the watches on his wrist. Oh, I am so happy with this figure. He looks so ridiculous, and I'm absolutely all about it. The figure itself is great. It's got a nice heft to it. The sculpt is fantastic, as you've probably come to expect from McFarlane. If you have the action figures or if you've just heard about McFarlane figures, you expect a certain level of quality, and that is definitely evident here. The detail and the musculature and then the folds of the clothes with the costume and everything, it just looks great. And the paint is fantastic. Like, it just pops. It's vibrant. And I was worried that some of the clocks would be a little weird for some reason. I don't know. I just felt like that might be a tacked on afterthought kind of thing. But I think from as far as I can tell, everything looks pretty spot on mine. The only things I've noticed first time like handling this figure is that some of the paint on his right wrist watch. That's a hard thing to say. Right wrist watch. Oh, I did it. Okay. The paint's a little off on that. It's an easy fix, but it's a minor flaw, but you know. And then I would have liked to have seen something on the face of the clock on his wrist. I mean, given that there's clocks everywhere, I don't think he's short on time. But still, it would have been neat to have seen a number or a clock on there. But yeah, there's a little paint flaw there. And then I noticed that on his the backs of his shoulders kind of have a little bit of a greenish kind of color to them. And I think it's because of the cape being close to the or pressed on to the shoulder, that some of the coloring from the cape rubbed off on the shoulder, but you can barely see it. And it kind of blends in anyway with the trick of the eye and the light and everything like that. You kind of have to be looking for it, but it's still there, and it's something I thought I'd mention. But other than that, this figure looks and feels fantastic, and I am so happy to have this in my collection. And not only that, but I cannot begin to tell you how happy a wired cloth cape makes me. It just takes my appreciation of an action figure like from 6 to midnight, if you know what I'm saying. And I am enamored with this. And it is just everything I love about collecting action figures, just all in one figure. And that's not necessarily rare to do, but it's always fun when you see it, because it doesn't get done very often to this level. I'm just a huge fan of a theme, and he totally plays into it, and he's so gaudy and just leaning into it, and I just absolutely love it. And one of my favorite things about him is that usually when you see a character, your eyes gravitate to their face, and I love that. If you have no idea who this character is, or you're just not even looking, you're just looking at a shelf full of action figures, your eyes are gonna go to his face, and you're gonna see that, oh, that's just a clock there. And I don't know, something about that just really makes me very happy, and I'm just delighted. But other than that, it feels pretty much like a basic buck from what I know of this line of action figures. I don't collect a lot of the DC line, but there's nothing too outrageous about the sculpt, unless I'm missing something. But it's a pretty standard sculpt, but it's still really good. So Clock King comes with a big hand sword, a little hand sword, a Clock King card, and a stand for the card for some reason. All right, let's take a look at the articulation you're going to get out of Clock King. So starting at the head, you have 360 at the neck. He can look up, not really that much at all. He can look down just a little bit, but yeah, as far as that motion, you're not getting really anything there. Doesn't really get any side to side either, so there's a very limited amount of motion you can get on the head. Moving on to the chest, he has a little bit of a butterfly joint, sort of. It's hidden by the sculpt, but it is there, so you get a little bit of wiggle room there with the shoulder. He also has 360 at the shoulder, as well as a joint in there as well. So that just adds to more wiggle room. 360 at the bicep. You got double jointed elbows at the elbow, of course. And then you have 360 at the wrist, as well as a split joint, which I don't collect a lot of the McFarlane figures. So this was something new to me, or at least I just did not recall. But this is very neat. It's a split joint. I don't know how well that's showing up. But yeah, it's split. And then it also can still move and hinge. And that's... I don't know. That's really cool. It looks a little weird, but it doesn't break the sculpt up too much. But I don't know. I'm just not used to that kind of articulation, but I think it's neat. Anyway, moving on to the chest, you do get a lot of rotation there. You got 360, which is really cool. And he's got a little bit of back movement in the chest area and a little bit more forward. But then also at the waist, he has a little bit, but not much. Actually, I don't know. No, I don't think he does, or at least mine's not, or mine's like super stiff. But no, there's you can't really get 360 at the waist; it's kind of stuck. But you can get it in the chest crunch area, so that's I guess that makes up for it. Then moving on to the legs, really good split range right there, which is awesome. He's got a joint in the leg that allows him to move it out and forward and back is impeded by his trunks, which kind of sucks, but sometimes you got to sacrifice that for the sculpt, I guess. But he can move it forward pretty well. And then he has double jointed knees and then an ankle rocker, as well as a toe joint that mine's a little stuck. A toe joint, and then the ankle rocker also has the split kind of joint that the wrist does, which is really neat and adds for a different kind of posability to this figure. And it's a little different than I'm used to with action figures, but I don't dislike it. I'm kind of intrigued by it. But yeah, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, and also, well, the cape is bendy, so you've got all kinds of movement there. And if I'm not mistaken, that is all of the articulation that you're going to get out of Clock King. So according to the Super Friends wiki, this version of Clock King stands at around 5'10" and weighs around 170 pounds. This figure stands at about 7 inches tall and weighs 5 ounces. So now let's see how he compares to some other figures you might have in your collection. Here he is with Marvel Legends Wolverine and SH Figuarts Kamen Rider Geo. Here he is with the NECA knockoff colored bandana Mirage Comics Donatello and the NECA 1987 animated series Donatello. Here he is with the NECA 1987 animated series Shredder and the NECA Return to New York Leonardo. Here he is with Jazzware's Agent Peely and Figma's Samus. Here he is with NECA's Alf and Jada Toys Mega Man. Here he is with Mattel's Masterverse Triclops and Hasbro's Power Rangers Lightning Collection Green Ranger. And here he is with the DC Collect and Connect King Shark and Marvel Selects Hulk. Alright, y'all, so I don't usually read a lot of the stuff, the flavor text with these action figure reviews because, I don't know, I certainly appreciate them and I read them all personally, but I feel like for a review, you kind of want to keep it moving and stuff like that. And I don't know, I just want to talk about the figure mostly, usually. However, I just wanted to read this for y'all. The Clock King was considered to be a third-tier villain by the authorities. thanks to his lack of superpowers and his weird fixation with clocks. Born the aptly named William Tachman, the Clock King commenced his criminal career after doctors incorrectly diagnosed that he had been struck down by a fatal disease and had only a short time to live. Determined to make every second of the rest of his life count, he executed a string of clock-themed robberies as the Clock King. Tachman's overall goal was to steal enough money so that his disabled sister would be well cared for after his death. Yeah, that was a curveball that I was not expecting. Because it kind of colors the villain in a totally different light. When you realize why he's being a criminal, like, it kind of changes your whole opinion of him. Anyway, with that out of the way, I remember the Clock King from the Batman the Animated Series, but he looked totally different than this getup. And this getup just screams Brave and the Bold for me. And I absolutely love that version of the DC universe. And then I forgot that they released this version of the Clock King as a Lego minifigure. And I can't believe I forgot about that, because I loved that figure then too. And I love this figure even more now because this is more my scale. I absolutely love this figure. The design and the sculpt and the costume and everything is just, it just brings back all the fun feelings about collecting action figures for me for some reason, just because they're so wild and different. And I don't know, there's just something about his ridiculous costume that brings me so much joy. And McFarlane did a great job here with an action figure. I mean, the sculpt is great. He plays and moves and looks great. Paint looks great. All that stuff is fantastic. And I don't collect a lot of McFarlane figures, but I mean, they're really good. They're good at what they do. And this figure is no exception. However, the thing that absolutely put this through the roof for me and my excitement and made it to where, like, I had to go against my better judgment and order this figure off of another site online because I just wanted it and was afraid I wasn't going to ever see him in the stores, was the Bendy Cape. The Bendy Cape is one of those things in action figure collecting that seems simple or subtle or just really inconsequential, but that is probably one of the biggest things that adds a ton of playability and posability and just photo possibilities. And I'm so glad that McFarlane is moving into this, and hopefully Marvel Legends will start to follow suit and include some of these Bendy capes, because it just takes a figure that's already really cool and fun just to a whole other level. And then add to that the shininess of the cape really makes this figure pop even more on the shelf. And with a character like this, you absolutely want this character to be noticed on a shelf when you're showing people your figures, because he is absolutely a conversation starter, because it's just such a loud costume. And then I probably mentioned this earlier, but I am a huge sucker for a theme. And the fact that his swords are clock hands, the little and the big hand, or the hour and the minute hand, I should say. I 100% am here for this. I had a hard time with the hands getting around the circle parts of the hands of the clock, the swords. But that's when I realized that he's not supposed to hold them there. He's supposed to hold them like where the circle meets the base of the hand. This is very confusing to say. Below the circle is where he's supposed to hold them, not in the circle. However, I found that holding the circle is a lot more fun because you can get a lot more dynamic poses and you can rotate it around still, because it's still a tight fit, but you can still wiggle it around in there. And that just adds a whole nother level of enjoyment to posing this figure, and I really dig that, even though it pretty much was a happy accident. Anyway, but like I said, I don't normally collect a lot of McFarlane figures because they are a little bit bigger scale than what I get, because I normally collect around 6 inches and these are about 7 inches, but he can work with some other 1/12 scale action figures. You can kind of make it work. And I'm really hoping that McFarlane will get into some more of the weird characters so that I can get just as excited about them as I did about Clock King, but right now Clock King is king in my opinion. So all that being said, if you have an action figure shelf dedicated to kings, well then, I mean, he's the Clock King. I mean, it's in his name. He needs to be there. Or if you have a shelf of characters that deal with time, I mean, this is just, that's made for him. Or if you have a shelf of action figures dedicated to villains who only turn to crime in order to be able to provide financially for their disabled siblings, then you will absolutely not be disappointed with the Clock King. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, hit the like button. If you want to see more from me, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments, what's your favorite version of the Clock King? Do you love this version? What's another themed character villain that I should look forward to from this McFarlane line? And yeah, let me know in the comments. And until then, else time.